Better check your team's roster. May be different today than it was yesterday. Welcome, everyone, into the voice of college football. Transfer portal craziness. Craziness. We could probably do an update every hour. So many players to go through, and would certainly love to get your comments and questions. And as we go through the transfer portal news from today and in recent days, leave us your comments and your questions regarding what players you would like to see come to your team, who's out there. And if you've got any updated information, because in addition to just, of course, tracking each of these transfer portal players, is trying to keep track of where they are visiting. And so we will do our best to keep up with it all in our Friday edition here at the Voice of College Football, our call-in show. Please call in. We have left the link in both the description section of this live stream and then also in the chat. Great to see all of you here at the Voice of College Football. We always appreciate your support. We have posted recent content with a Washington angle, a Texas angle, an Alabama angle, a Michigan angle. Guess what? Those are the 4 playoff teams. So we are certainly the place to be in terms of college football playoff previews. Texas, Washington, I believe the spread is still 4 to 4.5 points in Texas's direction. And Alabama probably a favorite, maybe a slight underdog at this point. I believe Michigan was a 1.5 point pick the last time I checked that, but we are still 3+ weeks away from that. National Signing Day is coming up in less than 2 weeks. Make it less than, yeah, it's on a Wednesday on the 20th. So that would be just about 2 weeks away. And again, plenty of coverage on National Signing Day. If you've been with us in previous National Signing Days, we basically are here all day Wednesday. We update you all day long with live streams and reports from various media contributors across the nation. All right, let's get to the latest concerning the transfer portal, and then we will take your calls and comments and questions and all of that good stuff. We've got an SEC channel, folks. We have posted videos on our SEC channel just in the last couple of days with an Arkansas update, Florida, Bama, LSU. Also, we might as well just slide the Oklahoma and Texas content right over to the SEC channel. So we will do that in the next several days. You see Texas, Washington featured behind me. Check out those videos that we posted today as well. Plus my 12-team college football playoff. It's not my 12-team college football playoff. The 12-team college football playoff as it would look from 2023 if we had a 12-team playoff. So Florida State fans, grab some Kleenex, watch our video, check it out. Not just an entry into the playoff, but as a 5 seed, a first-round game against Liberty at home. Automatic W. All right. On to the transfer portal. So let's check out the trusty 247 Sports transfer portal Twitter page. I will at some point start to call it X, but I just can't bring myself to do that. But we will get there. Elon would not be happy with me, and I'm actually very supportive and very glad that he's taken over Twitter because he has certainly made some exceptional changes to the platform, by the way. So what we've got here just in the last, half hour. We have a really good edge rusher, Fidel Diggs out of Texas A&M. Look at that, 36 tackles, 11 tackles for loss, and 4 sacks this past season. Officially entered into the transfer portal. Does your team need an edge rusher? Fidel Diggs is a good one. We've got Mississippi State star running back Woody Marks expected to enter the transfer portal. We have a San Diego State linebacker. We've got Texas wide receiver Isaiah Nair. He's starting to, he's basically in the portal. I know that it says they're expected to enter the portal. That's kind of a foregone conclusion. So Isaiah Nair was a star wide receiver at Wyoming who lit up the Mountain West Conference and transferred to Texas, had his issues getting into the lineup, had some injury issues, only one catch for Isaiah Nair this past season. Montana State. So don't forget about those FCS players that are at the top of their game that could jump up to FBS or Power 5 play. According to the report there, that Montana State transfer offensive lineman Rush Reimer with multiple Power 5 offers. We've got Tennessee defensive back Donico Slaughter. He's expected to go into the portal. Donico Slaughter had 32 tackles and a sack this past season, 63 tackles the last 2 seasons. And Tyler Barron, defensive end from Tennessee. He is also a good player, 28 tackles, 10.5 tackles for loss, and 6 sacks. Really good defensive end out of Tennessee. So the Vols losing multiple defensive stars there. Kansas State wide receiver RJ Garcia. Got to say, I don't know much about him. Then we've got Notre Dame defensive lineman Nana Osafo-Mensah, committed to TCU. This stuff just in the last 4 or 5 hours. There we've got UConn standout tight end Justin Joly, who caught 56 passes, 2 touchdowns. He has made an official visit to NC State. Carson Bruno, don't know much about him. All right, he's a TCU player. South Florida edge rusher Lloyd Summerall entered the transfer portal, 21 tackles, 4 TFLs. Andrew Makuba, really good player out of Clemson. And he's visiting all over the place, Texas included. 42 tackles, 2 picks this last year. Tulane star edge rusher Devian Deal will not play for a new coach at Tulane. He's entered the transfer portal. 40 tackles, 12 TFLs, 4 sacks. These are really good players. London Humphreys was rated by 247 Sports to be the number 1 rated wide receiver. And there you see the number 6 overall player, which kind of surprised me in the 247 Sports rankings for transfer players. He had 22 catches for Vandy and ranked ahead of guys like Tobias Merriweather and Julian Fleming on the wide receiver list. This guy can play. He is a really good player. Jamal Banks, Wake wide receiver, 69 catches, 653, 4 touchdowns. He's in the portal as a grad transfer. We have an Old Dominion offensive tackle. We've got North Texas transfer running back Oscar Attaway. And he is looking to go to South Carolina. He's a really good running back. One of the top group of 5 running backs, Andre Green. He's a playmaker out of North Carolina, wide receiver, top-notch ACC player. It just keeps going and going and going. There's Mario Anderson. He led South Carolina in rushing with over 700 yards, 3 touchdowns behind a bad offensive line. He caught 22 passes this past season. Larry Turner Gooden. He's a former 4-star, didn't play much at Texas. Walter Nolan, number 1 ranked transfer portal player. We talk a lot of quarterbacks, and rightfully so. There are about 15 Power 5 starting quarterbacks in the transfer portal, but this guy is the number 1 rated player, which shouldn't be too surprising considering he was the number 1 rated player coming out of high school Walter Nolan had 37 tackles, 8.5 tackles for loss, and 4 sacks. He's visiting Oregon. Vandy gets a commitment from TCU safety Randon Fontenette. We see all those schools lined up to get Arizona State transfer offensive tackle Isaiah Glass, Tennessee, Michigan State, Oklahoma State, Houston, and BYU. Carson Ryan can play. He's a UCLA tight end. There is Tobias Merriweather. And that came down about a day ago, and I believe that he is forecasted, and I can't remember exactly where, but he's almost 100% crystal ball in terms of his destination. Savion Bird's a former 100 top recruit. Jordan Waters is really good. He's checking out South Carolina, USC, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Texas A&M. The Duke running back Jordan Waters, who had 753 yards rushing this last year, 12 touchdowns, 5.3 per carry. He's gained over 1,600 yards. And if you look at a lot of these transfer players, like a Jordan Waters, his first year in college football was in 2019, meaning 2024 is going to be his 6th season. These guys are posting NFL careers. Another top player, edge rusher from Texas San Antonio, Trey Moore, crystal ball prediction in favor of Texas. The number 11 rated player in the transfer portal. And again, we could keep going on and on and on. And with all of that, we didn't even touch the quarterbacks. So we will hit the phones. Appreciate you all being here at the Voice of College Football. To kick us off tonight, DeReal MVP. DeReal, what's going on tonight?
Well, Mark, this is my favorite time of year, the transfer portal season, because this is where Kentucky really shines above almost anybody else in college football, Mark. I mean, Kentucky, I've heard it been thrown around. Kentucky is transfer quarterback U, and they're just lock and load with another great quarterback. And Brock Vandergriff, Mark, he was a 5-star quarterback. He's been adjusted by 24/7 Sports to be a 4-star player now, but Mark, Kentucky's got them bags. I mean, we got bags on top of bags on top of bags. Do you want to know how much Kentucky reportedly paid for him?
Well, I'm just sizing up the list of great Kentucky transfer quarterbacks. Will Levis, Devin Leary. Okay, great. Let's not stretch it, but I'm right there with you. Okay, Kentucky. How much they paid for Brock Vandegrift?
Yeah, I heard this, by the way, from KSR Sports. 1.8 to 1.9 million.
Okay. Well, I have heard from a number of different reliable sources that to get a top-notch quarterback, it's going to cost you $1.5 to $2 million. There you
Absolutely, absolutely. And Mark, you may be familiar with a guy named Chip Trainum.
He's heard of him. Yes.
I would like him as well, Mark. The University of Kentucky, we're very interested in him. He's slated for a visit for Kentucky, so we'll take him as well, please. And thank you.
Yeah. I certainly don't have any emotion tied to that because he's already in the transfer portal. So he's gone. He will not be a Buckeye next year. And when I say that, I realize that 1 out of 100 guys come back after testing the waters, but I don't think he's going to be one of those guys. So, all right, Kentucky, take him away.
Yeah, and you know, the transfer court rankings are already pretty fresh and pretty new, but Mark, would it surprise you 2 SEC schools are in first place? I mean, the SEC just, continuing their winning. Kentucky, Missouri, currently atop the transfer rankings. So the SEC just keeps on winning, Mark. I mean, you can throw whatever curveball you want at us, but we just keep winning down here, Mark, in the South.
Okay, well, winning on rankings and ratings, sure. Couldn't beat Miami or Florida State or New Mexico State or Texas this year. Couldn't win those games.
Yeah. I mean, they'll just have to beat they've beaten Louisville, Arizona, Tulane, those types of teams, which are decent programs, solid
Yes.
programs.
Kansas State, I'll help you out with that one
Yeah,
too.
Kansas State's a solid program. I agree with you there. So, Mark, one of the things I am very fascinated in, other than the transfer portal, is the odds for the college football playoff. I'm not sure if you've seen the odds, but it's very interesting.
Yeah.
So Michigan's at plus 200, Alabama's at plus 220, and Texas is at plus 250. Now, to me, I don't understand how that works because Alabama and Michigan play each other in the first round. They're basically saying Texas is getting a glorified bye by playing Washington, who's all the way down at plus 800. So if you would think that's the case, why isn't Texas favored to win it all?
Yeah, well, so they are heavily favoring the winner of the Michigan-Georgia or Michigan-Alabama game is what they're telling us first and foremost. Secondly, they're telling us, yes, that Texas has a strong opportunity to win the first game, but it's going to be difficult for them to win the second game. So, yeah, the odds, you're right, in a sense, contradict themselves in that they're giving Texas a walkover in the first game, so they should have higher odds, but they're clearly favoring the winner of the Michigan-Alabama game.
Right, because regardless of who wins Michigan-Alabama, if Texas does win, I don't see them being like a 14 or 17, just a massive favorite over Texas. Do you?
Over Washington?
Over Texas.
Okay, you're bypassing the first game. Well, the other thing that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and of course these numbers are crunched, and they know a whole lot more than I do in terms of how they approach odds, but I do understand odds. And Texas is only a 4 or 4.5 point favorite against Washington. That, when you put that together with the odds that they're giving us, those don't seem to jive too well either.
I completely agree. I was just something I found confusing. And Mark, Michigan's got this beat Georgia drill, and I was doing the talent rankings. I was looking at it, and Mark, this is crazy. So
Georgia's,
the Big Ten, I believe, is
Michigan. Sorry to cut you off. Unfortunately for Michigan, Georgia is not in the playoffs, so I guess they were wasting their time the last year.
Yeah, so this is crazy, Mark. I believe the Big Ten is the second best conference overall. Now, the results on the field suggest otherwise, but would you agree with me with there?
Yes.
Okay, so I looked at the talent rankings for every Big Ten team, okay? Every single one. And would you believe if you add all the 5 stars up from every Big Ten team, they have less 5 stars than Alabama does by themselves?
What is the number for Alabama?
18.
Alabama's got 18. And we went through this the other day. Ohio State has 10, correct?
Correct.
So the rest of the Big Ten could not help Ohio State reach 18.
Yes. The rest have 7 combined.
I know it's been like that for a long, long time. It's just, yeah, I know that Ohio State has had more 5 stars than the rest of the Big Ten all over the place for years and years and years. Back to these odds. Can we dive into these odds? One other step to these odds. So you are holding to this Michigan 5% chance of winning the national championship. Correct? Or are you still at 5%?
I'm slightly actually leaning less, but we'll keep it at 5%.
Leaning less. Okay, well, we'll round it off to 5. These numbers would suggest, if I'm going to do some rough math here, they've got Alabama, Michigan, and Texas relatively even. Relatively. You said plus 200, 220, and 250. So they probably make up more than 90% of the pie. So 35, 30, 25, something in that range between the percentages. And Michigan would be more like a 35% pick by Vegas to win the national championship.
Well, I did a converter. There's converters online that tell you.
Okay.
And Michigan's at 1/3 Alabama's like at 31, Texas is at 29, and Washington's at 11.
Okay.
Now, I
Sounds like
left
I'm
out
pretty
some
close on
decimal
my
points.
estimates there.
Yeah, you were pretty close.
Yeah.
But I just don't understand why Alabama is underdogs in this game. I just can't see it from a power rating standpoint. I understand on a results-based standpoint, Michigan is probably favored. But you're giving me Nick Saban with 3 weeks of rest, with the most talented team in the country, who has had the most impressive performance of the season last week. I just don't see why they're underdogs, Mark. Like, if one of these teams we were to tell me were to blow out the other team, I
Yes.
would be very, very confident that team would be Alabama. I can't see Michigan winning this game by more than 14 points.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you in any such way. And I don't want to be blinded by the past. I don't want to have name brand cloud my thinking or Nick Saban, but Nick Saban is Nick Saban and he's still Nick Saban. And he showed that again this year. Yeah, I haven't made an official prediction on this game, but maybe I'm going to show where I'm leaning heavily is Michigan's an excellent football team. They are an excellent football team. But what should give me much confidence in their ability to win a postseason game against the program that is the best postseason program in the last 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. So I'm right there with you that I believe it's going to be a good game. But if somebody said, hey, this game's going to finish 41-17, I would immediately say, yeah, Alabama won the game. Just like you, because while most of us, I'm guessing, both in the chat and otherwise, believe that this is going to be a good game, let's not be shocked if it's not a good game, because we've thought a lot of other games were going to be good games, and they didn't turn out to be good games.
Right. I was listening to your hit on Michigan podcast with Steve Dace, and he was saying the numbers compare Michigan to Georgia 2021. And you know what? Michigan might be Georgia 2021, Mark. But you remember the first time Alabama played Georgia 2021, what the final score of that game was?
Yeah, they beat them by 17 points.
Right. So it doesn't matter, honestly, how good this Michigan team might be or could be. Even at their best, I can see Alabama just annihilating this team.
So take me back to this conversation, because this is really bad of me because I was actually in the conversation, but I don't recall when he compared Michigan to 2021 Georgia, that was a comparison of his talent rankings, or was that a comparison statistically?
No, it was like he was comparing it to like what S&P Plus and FBI had.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yes. I just think that that's kind of crazy.
Kind of crazy.
I do think that Michigan's better in 2023 than they were in 2021.
I would agree with that too. I would agree with that too, but if they're even 2 or 3 touchdowns better than they were in 2021, I could see them getting run off the field completely. That 21-21 Michigan team did not belong with Georgia in any way, shape, or form. They just didn't belong.
No, and the final score is deceiving.
Correct. So I'm leaning, Mark, 63-28. I've got that score in my head.
Oh, you got a lot of points on the board.
I just don't see Michigan being able to stop Jalen Milroe. I really don't.
28. Okay. Well, you've got 3 or 4 weeks. Of course, we're going to keep checking in with you, and you can keep us updated on your score prediction, and then we'll lock it in close to the game. But yeah, 63. Well, Bama's not scored 63 points against anybody this year.
Correct. But this is a playoff game, Mark, and playoff games are just completely different than every regular season game. I've been
You're
trying to
right.
tell the Michigan man this because every time they say, well, we beat Ohio State. And every time they beat Ohio State, they either lose to a team that's worse than them in TCU or they
Yes.
get blown off the field completely or they lose their bowl games. So,
Yeah, this has certainly been the case. And for anybody out there, and I know that people are laughing at 63-28 or 63 points, we'll focus on the Alabama side. I don't think it's going to be anywhere close to that. However, for anybody out there laughing, including Ferris and some others, let's understand when you put together like a Joe Burrow, that LSU team, were they beating marginal teams in the SEC like they beat Oklahoma? No. We can go countless years through what the top team in the sport was able to do with the intensity of a playoff game, and it has happened time and time again. So you're
correct.
being bold, DeReal. I appreciate that you're being bold with your prediction and sticking to your guns. And you have recent history on your side, and you have talent on your side.
Right. And nobody's been able to explain the talent gap to me of a team. Because even if Michigan, let's say, somehow pulls off the ups, in my opinion, it'd be an upset and wins this game. They
Yeah.
have to play Texas probably next week. And I just don't see Michigan being able to get back in form and being able. I just don't see it, Mark. I just don't think they have the depth or the quality of talent to do it 2 weeks in a row against two teams that are significantly better than them in terms of talent. So that's just where I'm at. Now I could be wrong. Maybe Michigan can pull off a 2020 Cincinnati or 2022 TCU type run. And that's what I think it'll have to be for them to win. But I wanted to talk to you about the rankings. So because I'm sure you've seen FPI has Michigan at 1, S&P Plus has Michigan at 1, and I think I figured out why. I think the reason is because Michigan dominates teams, and that really messes with the computers. So if you win a game 41-3 versus 30-3, that's the same thing to me. But I don't think that is to the computers.
Well, I know that before championship weekend that Michigan was number 1, Ohio State 2, and Penn State 3 in the FPI.
That's
Now,
the way they're still ranked.
oh, they're still 1, 2, and 3 like that?
Yeah, they're still
Okay.
ranked 1, 2, 3.
Well, that's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy in and among itself, those 3 teams playing each other 3 times. Yeah, those are not the 3 best teams in the country.
Yeah, it's got those 3 teams, 1, 2, and 3. Oregon 4, Alabama 5, Georgia 6, Texas 7.
Georgia's the 6th best team in the country.
Yes. I just don't agree with that. Do you?
No, I don't agree with it. I still have the same opinion of the 4 best teams in the country of being probably in this order, despite the loss. Well, you know what? I do think that Alabama's win over Georgia proved quite a bit because while I would not categorize that as a dominant victory, I would categorize it as a game control victory. They got up by 2 scores. They kept, there was a sequence of allowing Georgia to score, but then separating themselves again to get to 2 scores. And so it wasn't a win where they held on defending their own end zone, let's say, with a 4-point lead. They had the ball. They controlled the ball the last 3 minutes with a lead. Georgia never even got the ball to try to even drive the field to win the game. So Alabama had pretty good grip on that game late in the 4th quarter. So that's an impressive win to me. I would rank them Alabama 1, Georgia 2, Michigan 3, Ohio State 4. Those who were, and then Texas 5, I guess Washington 6. if Jordan Travis is healthy, I don't know if I would go Florida State or Oregon, but I do believe that those 8 teams are above everybody else. And then there might be a little bit of a gap. Maybe Penn State's in that gap. Maybe Missouri's in that gap. Those are the only 2 teams that come to mind that could be possibly there. But I think that those 8 teams are the best teams in the country. But I believe that those 4, despite who's in the playoffs, are the 4 best teams.
I completely agree with you, and I think just these ratings and power rating systems has Michigan won because the thorough beatdown they've done on everybody they play this season. And I think that's really skewed the numbers towards Michigan. And I think we're getting a false perception from the numbers. Like, you remember the 2 best offenses Michigan has played, in my opinion, is Maryland and Ohio State. And they haven't looked anywhere elite in those 2 games as they did against everybody else. Even that Penn State game, and I don't think Penn State has a great offense or even a good offense.
No.
There were signs of weakness in there if Drew Aller was able to throw the football at all. So I'm just not buying stock that this Michigan defense is the best defense in the country. I honestly don't think they're probably top 5, but they're at the lower end of the top 5. And I think their defense is more of a product of playing really, really horrendous offenses like Minnesota, Purdue, and those types of teams. What do you think about that?
Well, I do think that the majority of Big Ten offenses are horrible. Or I'll be kind, some of them marginal. Wisconsin, marginal. I'm trying to find some other marginal ones. I'd say Ohio State probably is the best offense in the conference. Maybe Michigan does. I think it's really close. Maybe Michigan. I'd give Michigan the edge with J.J. McCarthy. Let's say they've got the best offense in the Big Ten, and then Michigan, and then Ohio State's number 2, and they're quite a bit better than everyone else. And then Penn State and Maryland are close. And then after that, does anybody have even a marginal offense? I guess maybe Rutgers has like a functional offense, and Wisconsin has a functional offense, and the rest of them are horrible. Yeah. And you couldn't say that about any other conference. For as much as I would like to prop up the Big Ten, I would do that on the defensive side to say it might be the best defensive conference, but the offense ineptitude is on the high end. There are more inept offenses in the Big Ten than anywhere else in the country.
Right. And to me, now I could be wrong, but to me, that has really skewed the numbers. Because I don't think the Big Ten should have 4 of the top 5 defenses. I think they've probably got 4 of the top 10 defenses, but 4 of the top 5 seems pretty heavy to me, Mark. That seems like overkill. That seems more of a sign of the bad offenses.
Yeah. And 4 of the top 10, that's still an extremely strong number for one conference to have 4 of the top 10. But yeah, they don't have 4 of the top 5. Yeah.
Right. And well, that's just my thoughts on the game, Mark. Hopefully we'll get some Michigan fans on here to explain why I'm completely wrong.
Oh, we've got one on deck.
Okay, I'll be looking forward to hearing him why the talent doesn't matter. Anyway, Mark, that's all I got for you. Fight on, roll Tide.
Thanks to Real. So let's understand something. It's funny to me that Michigan fans would downgrade Ohio State. I don't know what Michigan fans truly think of Ohio State, because it seems when I'm complimentary of Ohio State, they did go 11-1. And I do think that they're one of the 4 or 5 best teams in the country. And when I say I would put them in my top 4, and again, that's not a ranking. I've got them at number 6 in my rankings. That's not a resume ranking. That's this is what I believe how good they are ranking. This is my quality ranking, my power ranking, not my resume ranking. That again, I think that the top 8 are closer than they've been in years and years and years and years. So would it surprise me if Ohio State beat anyone in the country? No, they could beat anyone in the country. Would it surprise me if they lost to Florida State with Jordan Travis, or if they lost to Oregon or Washington or Texas or Alabama or anyone else? No. So it comes as a surprise to me when I believe, I might be wrong, that the great majority of Michigan fans that join us here at the Voice of College Football believe that they've got the best team in the country, but then they're always downgrading Ohio State. Well, that's your best win, and it was far from a dominant win or really a game control win. I think Ohio State outgained Michigan, and they were 35 yards away from the end zone to win the game. So, like, that's not a big game control win, especially at home. And so it's funny when Michigan, and I'll take it to the extreme, but it's not like this is uncommon, talks about Ohio State being trash and Ohio State sucks and so forth. Now, there is the my rival sucks claim as more like not talking about the actual football, but just I hate them. They suck. That's different. I get it. Ohio State could have the best team in the country, and Michigan fans would still say Ohio State sucks, and vice versa. So I get that kind of claim, but it just amuses me when people trash their rivals or other teams on their schedule who actually their significance or their quality helps their resume. But if that's what they truly believe about Ohio State, that they're like the 20th best team in the country, then Michigan's in for a rude awakening in the playoff. All right, we got Biggs Mike's on the line. Biggs, what's going on tonight?
How you doing today, Mark?
I am doing just fine.
Is the real MVP a Kentucky fan?
Yes.
Okay, so he never has to worry about his team competing for a playoff or anything because it's not going to happen, most likely, even in the 12-team
in a
playoff.
12-team playoff.
Maybe.
Well, based on the last 5 years,
Yeah.
they would have competed a couple times.
But he rides the SEC because of Alabama and Georgia. That's the main thing. That's the boast. It appears.
Well, I don't know that he's boasting. He's just giving his opinion.
63-14.
Well, he said 63-28, but
he gave us 28.
Whatever.
Okay, 28. Okay, that's good. Well, I'm glad he's given us 28 points.
He's siding with history and with what is proven to be the difference in college football playoff games. So until he's proven wrong, that's the way it's played out. There is not a team that is lower than 6th in the team total talent rankings. The total team talent rankings that has been lower than number 6 that has won the national championship.
Yeah, as a Michigan fan here, first off, I can't even, stand up for the playoff the last 2 years. The Georgia, I knew Michigan wasn't beating Georgia. I don't think no team was beating Georgia that year. That defense Georgia had in 2021 was just one of the best defenses I've ever seen in my 30 years of watching.
Yeah, absolutely.
College football, right? No,
but also understand that the game that Alabama played, when you say nobody could beat Georgia, well, Alabama could. They were good enough.
Agreed, because once again, it gets back to the talent pool, right? Michigan does not recruit top 5. Like, it's normally Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, typically every year. Well, I mean, from what I see, Michigan is normally 8 to 15, probably. So yeah, I can't argue the talent gap. I mean, Michigan maybe get one. They got 1 5-star the last few years, Will Johnson. That was about it. And Alabama gets, 18 on the roster right now or something like that? Yeah, it's just ridiculous, right? So, but that's, once again, this is why we play the games. We will see what happens. And I don't think this is the same Alabama team over the last, 5 to 10 years. I mean, let's not forget, it took one of the dumbest defensive calls in history for them to beat Auburn. So, then you have that. They almost lost to Arkansas. They almost lost to UCF. And I admit they have improved over the season. Milroe has gotten a lot better. I'm not arguing that. But I think Michigan's defensive line is going to do pretty well against their offensive line. I think they're going to be able to get pressure on Milroe. The problem is he can run. And I hate running quarterbacks because you just can't count for it, right? Because you can play the best defense, as you know, as being an Ohio State fan, and the quarterback scrambles and gets the first down. And I think that's the X factor in that game is Milroe. Can they keep Milroe in check and make him throw the ball? And I think if they make him throw the ball from the pocket, he will throw some turnovers. He will throw a couple interceptions. I do believe that. I still don't think he's a good thrower of the ball. Like, he can throw a deep ball, but he can't really throw a 10 to 15-yard accurate pass.
Well, of course he can. He doesn't on a regular basis.
Exactly. He's not consistent with it.
Yes.
Maybe rephrase. He's not consistent with that. But I think, I just really hope Michigan gets it. I want to see what the real MVP has to say. But no, I can't argue with it. He's right. Alabama is Alabama.
Well,
And
Michigan fans, including you here, Biggs, your best argument against the talent gap and against the recruiting rankings is the transfer portal.
agreed. Yep.
That's
point.
not been taken into consideration, and that was not a factor in the past. There was no transfer portal. Well, there was, but there was not usage of the transfer portal to this degree. So Michigan has built its offensive line through the transfer portal. It has built some of its defensive line, has gained its third best corner, and so forth and so on. So that has, I think that's been a way of bridging the gap between them and Ohio State. They've been much more impactful in the transfer portal than Ohio State.
And I see a lot of, I'm not a fan who bashes on Ohio State. I think Ohio State's a top 5 team, to be honest. I mean, Ohio State's loss is to the number 1 team on their home field, and Alabama's loss was to Texas at home, right? And now they did beat Georgia in a neutral site, whatever it is. I know it's still Atlanta, but it's supposed to be a neutral site by 3 points, which is probably the best win of the year. But I think Ohio State is top 4 or top 5, in my opinion, still. So I take nothing away from Ohio State at all. And that game had me on the edge of my seat when you guys had the ball on the 35-yard line. I was like, we're about to lose by 1 point. As a Michigan fan, I'm always, I've seen the worst, so I just expect it, right? And
well, Biggs, unfortunately, I was expecting the same thing, and we were both wrong.
I know I had to literally almost go to the other room when about before that interception happened, because I was like, they're going to throw it to Marvin Harrison. He's going to catch it on the 5-yard line, and then they're just going to run the ball in on us. I know what's going to happen.
I was dreaming at that point of being able to come on here, and I would have said this. I would have said, you know what? Michigan played a better game, but Ohio State stole it. But they didn't, because Michigan made a great defensive play. Who came around the edge? Who was that?
It was number.
Was that Jalen Harrell?
Jaren Harrell, yes, that's
yeah.
Yep. He swept around the edge and got to McCord right when he was throwing it. His arm got hit and the ball fluttered. I mean, it was a great call by the defensive coordinator to send that, because I was hoping they don't do what all teams do, is they just sit back and let them, pick off 20 to 15 yards at a time. I'm glad they brought the blitz, because with Marvin Harrison on that end, and even Abuka. Ohio State, it's loaded receiver. So I just thought, I thought it was going to go. It didn't happen that way, but I think Michigan's really good at developing their 3-star talent. Right? You can get all these 5-star recruits, but if you don't develop them, or they, it's just a rating. I understand it's a big factor, but I mean, Ron Moore was a 3-star recruit, right? I mean, a lot of our best players over the years of Michigan history have not been 5-star recruits. I go far back, even Mike Hart was a 2-star recruit, and he's one of our time leading rushers. And it's just, Jason Avant wasn't a top recruit. He's one of our best. Steve Breston.
Yep.
Michigan's always developed players pretty well. Now, don't get me wrong. I wish we had 18 5-stars, but that's just not the way Michigan recruits. I don't know why. They just don't. I think they go for a certain type of player, and that fits the culture, I would say, that Michigan's built. And it seems to be working these last 3 years. So I'm not going to argue with it. I'm praying for a good January 1st game, because it's Alabama, and the history is always on Alabama's side when you play them in the playoffs. So I can't dispute it at all. But
Explain something to me as a
yeah.
logical Michigan fan. Explain this to me.
Well, thanks for saying that first off.
So maybe you're not the person to pose this question to, because I need an illogical Michigan fan to come on here. So a Michigan fan has, of course, every right in the world to say that Michigan is better than Ohio State. They won the game on the field, fair and square. So I totally get that. And I have said a million times that the burden of proof is more on me, still believing that Ohio State is a slightly, very slightly better team than Michigan. And I also say that understanding that if God Almighty came down right now and told me that I was wrong, I'd say, okay, I got it. Yes, I was wrong. I need to go with the results.
Now,
Okay.
now you.
So
Okay,
so
go
what
ahead.
I'm not understanding is that we have examples all over the place of teams that defeat other teams, that there is still a belief that the other team is better.
Mhm.
Okay. And I'm not talking about 2018 Purdue beats Ohio State and Ohio State's 13-1 and wins the Rose Bowl in the Big Ten, and Purdue loses 7 games. Now that's ridiculous. That was just obviously on that given night. No, I'm talking about that their resumes are extremely close. I'm talking about when Washington and Oregon played in the Pac-12 championship leading into that game. It was not only not looked down upon, it was the common thought that Oregon was still better than Washington, even though Washington beat Oregon. And it's a common thought right now that Alabama's better than Texas, even though Texas beat Alabama. And last year that Alabama was better than Tennessee, even though Tennessee beat Alabama. So I find it amusing, and that Michigan was better than TCU, even though TCU beat Michigan. I could go on forever with these examples,
And
and
I.
still I have people calling me names in
Well,
comment
first off,
section.
those people in the comment section are Michigan fans. Don't you know better than to listen to a lot of that. Now,
Oh, sure.
are you making this same statement in 2022 game?
No, I
Okay,
didn't make that statement.
okay,
This
okay.
is the
I
and
don't
and
recall
see
you
this is
making it.
and
I don't
see
recall
this
you
is
making
what
that.
this is what they assume. I'm sure they don't remember, or they weren't around and listening to me the previous 2 years to know this. But in 2021, when Michigan beat Ohio State, I said, "Wow, that was a dominant win. Michigan's better than Ohio State." And I didn't think that Ohio State team was, of course, they were good, but they weren't Ohio State good that season. So I clearly said a number of times, Michigan's better than Ohio State this
Yeah.
season. I didn't think that their program was better at that point, but I clearly said Michigan's better than Ohio State in 2021. In 2022, this is how my evaluation went. After that game, Michigan's better. Now, after the playoffs, I kind of backed off to more like, well, if Ohio State did that against Georgia and Michigan played like that against TCU, I'm not so sure. I
Well,
don't know.
I think first off, this season, Michigan versus Ohio State, it's a toss up. Any way you want to get the better team. So you saying you think Ohio State's a better team? I'm not going to get upset about it because that game was, I mean, it literally was a toss up, right? You guys were one play away from winning the game.
And when I say I think they're a little bit better, I literally mean like, yes, it's a toss up, but I think Ohio State's a little bit better. Yeah.
Yeah. If you would have made that statement, I listened to your show for many years now, so I don't remember you making that in 21, 22. So you didn't. But making it this year, I heard you say it, and I saw people lose it when you said it. You know, like I was watching another show, and so someone was asking about it. Like, I heard Mark Rogers went crazy and said, Ohio State's a better team than Michigan right now. And I was like, he says, in his opinion, slightly better, that Ohio State's a better team, but Michigan won the game. I'm not going to argue it, Like, I think Michigan and Ohio State are neck and neck this year. So yeah, I don't know why Michigan fans say that, but like, yeah, Michigan is a better team than TCU. I think Michigan personally took TCU for granted, and Michigan, they gave up 50-something points on that game. Like, that's just ridiculous to TCU, right? Like, and Michigan hurt themselves from the moment that game started. 50-yard run by Donovan Edwards. You get down to the 5, you try to run the Philly special on 4th and 2. That's not Michigan's game. That's not what they do. Like, I was like, what are you doing? Like, and then that whole game, they just kept kicking themselves in the foot. Now, there was a couple calls that went the other way, but that happens in every game, right? I think that Roman Wilson was a touchdown. They called it back, and then we fumble on the 1-yard line, right? Things just kept happening in that game. Or I remember, I think it was the third quarter, Michigan had TCU like 3rd and 7. They miss a tackle. That guy runs for like a 60-yard touchdown on the receiver does. It was just like Michigan just took that for granted. And then what you guys did against Georgia, like, I think Ohio State exploited Georgia's weakness was the cornerbacks in the back end of that defense, right? Like, they could not stop you. It was basically a track meet is what it was. And Georgia found themselves in trouble in that game. But I would still say Michigan was a better team in 2022. That's just my opinion. You may think, Ohio State was at the end. That's what you saw in the playoffs. But I think Michigan was a better team. But I could be wrong. It's just my opinion, But I'm not going to.
So these people continue to make these comments. Like Ryan says, what is the point of saying Ohio State is a little bit better? Well, the point is that's what we do here is we talk about college football.
That's what we do. We talk about it. We debate about it. And you're like the most unbiased Ohio State fan I've ever listened to. That's why I listen to your show. I listen to the other Ohio State people after that loss, just listen to them cry about the loss. Right. Like,
yeah. Here's another difference. I'm not saying that the officials in any way altered the game or called a bad game. I think it was completely fair and square. I don't even complain about that second touchdown. I believe that was a touchdown. Yeah. I'm just making an evaluation from the entire season. And again, it's so incredibly close in my mind that's my conclusion. So, like, I'm still seeing comments in the chat that I'm delusional.
If you think about the season, right, as a whole, so you do a couple of comparisons. I think Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State, Penn State was basically a similar game, basically the same kind of game, right? It was neck and neck, right? Penn State has no offense. You guys have a good defense. Same with Michigan. Now, you guys have Marvin Harrison, which was a difference maker in that game. We ran the ball because we, with Donovan and Corum. I think that was a comparable game. Now, the Maryland game, you guys struggled. I'm going to say struggled, but they would end the game for the first 3.5 quarters, maybe going into the fourth. It was a close game. I think y'all were up by like 10, right? And y'all blew them out. Michigan went down to the wire with Maryland. But all the other games, you guys blew out Michigan State. We blew out Michigan State. Like, the season is neck and neck. If you look at
Minnesota,
Purdue, all the same kind of game. So that's why I'm saying if you look at the season as a whole between Michigan and Ohio State, it's a coin flip, to be honest, this year, right? So I don't understand why people would come at you for making that statement, but that's what it is. It's like I had to deal in 2022 when Michigan beat Ohio State. All I heard was, well, it came down, it's those 5 plays we gave up. Well, that's how football works. Like, normally that is what happens. Sure. Like, oh, you gave up 2 touchdowns. That's how football works. 5 plays is what got Ohio State. That's how football normally works. So I don't know why that was an excuse about, like, oh, we didn't give up that 80-yard run. Yeah. We didn't give up that 60-yard pass. Well, of course not, right? I mean, that's the way it works.
And I understand we're all emotional. If Ohio State won the national championship this year and somebody told me, well, I don't think they're the best team, I would be slightly offended by that. So I get it. I would be like, well, what do they need to prove? They won the national championship. Why are you saying they're not the best team? Like, this guy, Stan, this is another thing that people confuse. He says, posted on the screen, you can't be a better team while consistently losing head-to-head matchups with other variables being comparable. Y'all are conflating talent ranking with the quality value of the team. No, Stan, what you are conflating is the 2023 team with the 2022 team with the 2021 team. I take them all as separate teams. I know there's overlap of players, but they are not the same team each year. So for all these people that said, well, how can you say that Ohio State's better than Michigan because Michigan beat Ohio State 3 times? Well, no, this Michigan team did not beat this Ohio State team 3 times. They played 1 time.
Well, yeah, and I've heard all your, opinion. Like after all the last 3 games happened, I think it came down to the lines of scrimmage.
Yeah.
Like
did Cade McNamara play 2 weeks ago in Ann Arbor?
No.
Did Hassan Haskins play in that game? Did C.J. Stroud play in that game? We could be here all day naming players. Are the teams somewhat the same? Of course, they're somewhat the same, but they're not the same teams.
And that's what I love about college football. Every year, I'm enjoying all these victories because as a Michigan fan, as you know, like you're an Ohio State fan, the last 20 years have been dominated by Ohio State. So that's why I don't talk noise about Ohio State. Like I'm just enjoying these victories as we get them, because as a Michigan fan, it hasn't happened in a long time. So I'm enjoying it. I'm not going to bash Ohio State. I think Ohio State's one of the top 5 teams. I also think Georgia's one of the top 5 teams. That if I was picking my playoff, it would no particular order. I think it would be Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan, Georgia.
Well, that would be my 4, and I would put Ohio State on the low end at 4. If you're just asking me, yes, who I believe are the best teams, I think Alabama's. I think it's just so close between the first 3. Yeah. Anyway, those would be my top 4. Now, see, here points out where opinions can differ on the same exact team. So Hummus Hero, big Buckeyes fan, of course, he says he thinks the 21 Ohio State team was the best of the past 5 years. I tend to think it was the worst of the last 5 years. That defense was no good.
Well, you also, not only did they give up in that was 2021, right? That they lost to Oregon at home, or was it 2022?
Yes, lost to
2021.
Oregon.
Yeah, so they gave up 300 yards to Oregon on the ground in 2021, and they gave up. That was not a good defensive.
No.
Ohio State team. Now I think 2022 was a lot better, but I think Jim Knowles sold out too much against Michigan, and it burned them. And this year he adjusted. You didn't see no big plays from Michigan at all, right? He adjusted the defense, and that's why the game was a better game. Like they made adjustments. And that 2021 Ohio State team was not the best of these last 3 years. Now I think you had a better quarterback, of course. I mean, I take Stroud over McCord any day, but as a whole, I think this is the best Ohio State team. Now, if you put Stroud on this team, yeah, well, that's a different story, right? But that's not how it works. But yeah, don't let these some of these Michigan fans come at you. I got to deal with this Ohio State fans coming at me all the time. So all I hear is the year 2000. Because I'm enjoying these victories, so I have a little smack talk. Like, well, we dominated the last 20 years. I'm like, that's cool. We got the last 3, so we'll just keep going from there.
Oh yeah, and that's what counts right now. Well, they all count. We can have historical discussions too, but for right now, that's what counts, is that Michigan won the game, and Michigan's the Big Ten champion for the last 3 years. And Michigan fans should be bragging and boasting as well.
You said something one time. I forget how you laid it down. If you're this amount of age, you like Ohio. If you're this amount of age,
people did like that.
Kind of a thing, right? And I'm 42, right? So I was a teenager in the 90s, so I had a lot of good Michigan years, right? So, but then, the years 2000 came around, and then my 20s and 30s were pretty horrible, and now my 40s are gotten better. So it's there's a lot of I think as a Michigan fan, I just kind of expect the worst to happen. So I'm just a realist with it. I'm just hoping for a good game January 1st, and we'll see what happens. I think it's going to be a close game. I don't think it's going to be a blowout by Alabama this year. I don't think they have the receivers for it, and I don't think Milrose I could see it however it goes. I could see it being like a low 30s game either way, maybe high 20s, 28-24, 32-28, something like that. Either way you want to take it. And I think JJ McCarthy is going to be a good X factor, because when they played Georgia, Beck's not going to run the ball. Now, I don't know if they're going to let JJ run the ball, but that is an X factor because JJ has speed and he can run. Not like Milroe, but he has the ability to do it if you let him. And as much flack as JJ got for that TCU game with those 2 pick sixes, which are horrible, if you watch that second half and like the third quarter and on, he did his best to bring Michigan back. I mean, I watched that game. You know, it took me a while to watch that game again, but if you watch those JJ from third quarter on, I mean, he was doing all he could. Running the ball, I think he had like a 30-yard touchdown run. He had a 2-point conversion run. He had a couple of deep, like, flea-flicker passes for touchdowns. He played a pretty solid game. You can't take away the 2 pick sixes, but the kid has a lot of talent. And I'm just hoping they let him use it. But we just don't have the receivers. Michigan never has that game-changing receiver like you guys have. Like, we just can't recruit that kind of player because we don't throw the ball enough. We can't get a Marvin Harrison or Nabuka. Like, you know, Cornelius is a great possession receiver. Wilson's a good slot receiver. We have 2 good tight ends, but we don't have that player where you can just throw it up to go get it as a receiver, you know? And I wish we had that. I'm hoping we get to talk about the portal. I'll let you go. I've been talking to you for a while. But I'm hoping we get that one guy from Indiana. That would be a good pickup. McCauley, I think his name is, from Indiana, is talking to Michigan, which would be a good pickup. And well, supposedly he's interested in Michigan. He has a couple of teams. I think he's actually visiting Kentucky or Duke. I think Duke he's visiting right now. But he's a good receiver. And there's some out there, you know, to get now. Like what was like 1,000 about 1,000 transfer portal players open right now. So it's I thought it was pretty interesting too. Now you can correct me. This might just be because Michigan's in the playoffs, but they haven't had one transfer yet. You think that's just because of the playoffs, or you think that's the way because Michigan runs their program where they at some games 50 players have played in one team? That Harbaugh lets players play, you know, the second string, third string play, or you just think because we're in the playoffs, no one's transferred out yet?
It's both. I think it's both because there are going to be less players that are going to transfer or hit the transfer portal for playoff teams. That's for obvious reasons. But there still are players hitting the transfer portal. Let's say at Alabama, they've had, at last count, I think 2 or 3 players. Texas has, I think, 7 players in the portal. I don't know about Washington. So there are players hitting the transfer portal from those teams, but it's a lot lower than most teams across the country by far. So I think it's Michigan's culture, but I also think it's the playoff factor as well.
Do you think there's anything with all the Ohio State players leaving? Or you think it's just moving on to see if something better's out there? Do you think there's anything going on inside those walls, or is it just, you know, looking for a change?
Well, there's really only... there's only one impact player, what I consider an impact player, unless I'm missing somebody that's leaving. So none of those guys are playing. Now, they were all really, not all, a number of them were really high recruits. So they're going to be coveted by teams out there because they were about 4 of them were top 75 players in the country coming out of high school, but they just couldn't get on the field. But Julian Fleming,
that was when I got me. It was Fleming because he was the third receiver, right? So you would think this year he would be 1 or he would be 2, right?
Yeah, you would think that. But they also have a pipeline with some other guys that may pass him by, and we're starting to pass him by, like Carnell Tate.
Gotcha. Okay.
Now, Vic Cutler was supposed to be a big pickup in the transfer portal, but he never panned out from last season, and so he's back in. But really, it's just, Fleming. But with all the NFL losses, that team is going to be, it's going to be gutted. It's going to be a fun season next year. Is
Henderson coming back?
Yes, he's coming back.
Oh, he is. He said he's coming back.
Yep.
So that's why Trainum left. Okay, that makes sense. Now, okay, that's why I was wondering. That's good for you guys. I mean, good to have if he can stay healthy. You know?
And I am not expecting this to transpire, but Marvin Harrison just said in the last day or two that he still hasn't decided.
I just don't see it happening. I mean, he could, but well, they're talking about. I saw a post where like he could get almost 20 million, 25 million from NIL money, that's oof, that's ridiculous. First off, if he can get that, but I mean,
Yeah.
just I know he said he wants to beat Michigan, he wants to win the Big Ten, but man, that's a lot of things. I mean, there's no guarantee any of that's going to happen, right? Especially with what the Big Ten's about to become with Oregon and Washington joining, right? It's going to be a little bit harder to win that. And then with injuries, I think he's going to go. I think he's going to be like Stroud. Remember Stroud last year? He did the same thing where he held off to the last minute. So I think if you're going to be Marvin Harrison's a top 3 pick, that's a big opportunity to pass up. But if y'all get him back, I mean, I don't know who your quarterback's going to be. I don't know if I'm just worried if you guys get, not worried, but if you guys get like a Cameron Ward to come in, does Devin Brown transfer out?
Probably.
Yeah. So that's something Ryan Day will have to account for, because a lot of people seem to like Devin Brown. I don't know much about him. I know he's more of a runner. But
well, I got to say that on the limited amount of time that I saw him this year, I can't say that I was overly impressed. But it's very limited, so it's really not
Mark,
worth talking about.
I won't take much of your time. Thanks for calling me a logical Michigan fan. Right back at you as an Ohio State fan. So I always appreciate you letting me come in and talk football with you. And it's actually good to talk to an Ohio State fan that can have a reasonable conversation and talk actual ball. So take some of the emotions out of it. I hope I do the same for you as well as a Michigan fan. So it's but you enjoy the rest of your evening, and I'll talk to you again soon, my friend.
Thanks, Biggs. All right. Some interesting comments there in the chat. I appreciate Moose highlighting a lot of the things that we have offered here at the Voice of College Football. So check out Moose posts in the chat. This one right here that we've got on the screen is for our friends at Aura. So believe me, I went through this, and the reason that we have an Aura sponsorship is because actually they reached out to me about 6 months to a year ago, not knowing that I was already a client. So that kind of worked out well, because I could, in all honesty, vouch for them and promote them and endorse them, because they did a phenomenal job with my cybersecurity. So just understand that whether it's your credit cards, whether it's your own personal information, your identity, and obviously everything that we have involved with our lives these days on social media, and just being connected in banking and to a number of financial organizations, you can't get around it these days that your information is out there. So it's exposed to a certain degree. So protect your name, protect your identity, protect your finances, protect your family. With Aura, go to the link that Moose has provided there in the chat, aura.com/Mark Rogers, and you can sign up for a free 14-day trial. All right. So actually, Moose had one of the comments I was going to respond to as well, saying something about, are we really going to give a 9-3 quarterback the Heisman Trophy? Well, we have twice in the last 12 years. Lamar Jackson, 9-3 quarterback. Robert Griffin III, 9-3 quarterback. Both won the Heisman Trophy. My ballot would look like this. I would go, and I haven't given this a whole lot of thought. I have looked through in preparation for this show, and you guys would be proud of me. Instead of sitting down 3 minutes before we started and just talking, I went through a litany of transfer portal players and kind of comb through some of the most recent activity so we could truly give a transfer portal update as we advertised. And then also some Heisman candidates, in addition to the 3 that seem to be pretty obvious: Jaden Daniels, LSU, Michael Penix, Washington, and Bo Nix of Oregon. And I started to build graphics, and then I thought, there are professional sites out there. that have provided us with much better graphics than what I would detail here. So why don't we go with those folks? So let's first look at, we're going to give some love to the defense. And I am ordering these players by interceptions just to highlight one, Xavier Watts. Exceptional player. I do not keep track of the national awards, but I know that he just won one of the major Defensive Player of the Year awards in college football. Xavier Watts, when I was watching, he was phenomenal. Xavier Watts, Notre Dame, with 7 interceptions, 4 passes defense, 47 tackles. Also, Billy Bowman of Oklahoma is a really good player. He had 6 picks. He defended 4 passes, 61 tackles. Let's see anyone else stand out on this list. I am super impressed. Michigan fans, listen up. Give me a gold star for this. Mike Sanders is phenomenal. I do believe that based on the football that I watched this year, and I can't see everyone, and I only have 2 eyeballs, and therefore I only watch 3 screens at a time, and I can really only pay attention to 2, truth be known. And I'm watching football from noon until midnight, until I jump on here every Saturday, and any Power 5 games played on Thursday and Friday. So I watch quite a bit of football. And I would say Mike Sanders and Will Johnson are the best cornerback tandem in college football. Slight edge over Penn State, slight edge over Alabama. And probably if you just go with ball skills at cornerback, yes, those 2 guys are better ball hawking corners and have better ball skills as a combo than any 2 in the country. Mike Sanders and Will Johnson. Terrion Arnold is exceptional, and he's one of the main reasons why, of course, being one of 2 corners, one of 2 main corners. Of course, you can't play with 2 corners anymore in college football. You got to play with multiple guys, either rotating in or match up slot corners and bringing safeties down to pick up tight ends and pick up slot receivers at times, depending on your trust in your safety play. That Terrion Arnold and Kool-Aid McKinstry are exceptional. Arnold had 11 passes defensed and 5 interceptions. Cam Kinchins is supposed to be one of the best, and he is one of the best. I would just say that when I saw him this year, I did see him make some misplays and get abused a few times, but he's still exceptional. Down the list, Beanie Bishop. I can't say that I watched West Virginia play a lot of football this year, but I have seen highlights of Beanie Bishop. Do know that he's exceptional. He had 20 passes defensed this year and 4 picks. If we look at our top sack leaders from the Power 5, so your top 3 are all from the group of 5. Trey Moore is in the transfer portal, 14 sacks. Laiatu Latu out of UCLA is a monster. He's a force. Jonah Ellis, a force out of Utah, 12 sacks. Wish they had the tackle for loss stats here. They do not. So those are 2 guys in particular. Dallas Turner at Alabama and Jared Verse, who didn't put together the statistical season that he did last year, but actually played better football overall, better team defense. Jared Verse, Dallas Turner, exceptional at Alabama and Florida State. All right. I was going to make a list of wide receivers that I would consider Heisman candidates. Of course, there is one receiver that is truly a Heisman candidate, And I believe his name is Marvin Harrison Jr. Let's pick this up from Adam. Adam, thank you so much for the contribution. Appreciate that. Adam says Washington is a disgrace and has no business being in the playoff. Georgia should have got in over Washington, and identifying the four best is far less subjective than identifying the four most deserving. Identifying the four best is far less subjective or more objective than identifying the four most deserving. Well, Adam, I appreciate your comment. I know you're a smart football fan. We've talked. I know you know your stuff, and you have a little slightly, I don't really think that your perspective, based on our conversations, is that much different than mine. I just choose to take my opinion as much as I possibly can out of the equation to select playoff teams. So it sounds like Adam believes that Michigan, Bama, Texas, and Georgia is the rightful playoff. And yes, I do believe from our conversations that I should already know that. And Adam believes that Ohio State's the fifth best team. I believe that's accurate. So, Adam, thank you so much for the contribution. Your support helps us here at the Voice of College Football. So know that it keeps us going. And in any way that you can support, folks, like the video, follow us on social media, whether that's on Twitter in particular. That's the one I'm most active on. Now, I would say going forward, we are going to do our best to branch out to Instagram in particular. I think should be our next frontier on Instagram. So we do have a Voice of College Football Twitter, obviously, and a Voice of College Football Instagram. So please follow us at those destinations. I want to thank everyone that follows me on Twitter, because here's the deal. On Twitter, I didn't know this until a few weeks ago. You need 5 million impressions on Twitter every 3 months. So about 1.7 million impressions per month on Twitter to become monetized on Twitter. Now, I don't know if we're talking about making $3 a month or $3,000 a month. I don't know much about it, but I talked to somebody the other day and they said, Mark, why aren't you monetized on Twitter? And I said, I don't know anything about it. And they said, well, we think you can become monetized on Twitter. So why don't you look into that? Well, based on what I looked up, we are hitting 2 of the criteria out of 3 to become monetized on Twitter or X. But the other one, we've got a ways to go. So I looked at our impressions on Twitter, and this time last year, we were doing about 60,000 impressions per month. And again, 1.7 million is required. And I don't know how long you have to sustain that to show Twitter or X that you are worthy of being monetized, as I need to close that window so I don't have music that's going to be copyrighted. So we were at only 60,000 impressions per month 1 year ago. That 60,000 figure is now up to about 600,000. So we've increased our traffic on Twitter 10 times in a year, but it's still not nearly enough. We need to increase it about 3 times now. So we've gone up 10 times. We need to increase it now 3 times to get to about 1.7 to 1.8 million impressions per month. And then we can apply to be monetized on Twitter. And again, I don't know what that entails in regards to what type of monetization we're talking about, but it's another revenue source that needs to be explored. But so I want to thank everyone that follows me on Twitter because of the engagement and because of, I got to say this, when I post content on Twitter, when I advertise our various shows, when I post videos, hardly anybody notices that stuff. That's not interesting enough. That's not provocative enough for people to partake in. So I usually get 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 likes. But when I post my opinion, when I put some things out there like, well, Michigan fans, you can boast about being less than 3 years old. If you're less than 3 years old, then you own the series. Or if you're over 100 years old, and I put a picture of Bo and Woody, and then I stated that if you're an Ohio State fan, then you can boast if you're between the ages of 3 and 100. And that riled a bunch of people up. And it got like, I don't know what the number is, like 300,000 impressions. And then today I just said something about, I don't even remember. I couldn't even tell you now what I put out there today that let's see let's do a little Twitter X promotion here. Let's do that, shall we? We have looked at this transfer portal quite a bit. So there's the transfer portal. And here is me. And let's also keep in mind that this was as of a couple of weeks ago, and we've picked more winners in the last couple of weeks. So sign up for bowl season because we'll be making all our bowl picks. And Steve Merrill from Wager Talk is going to be with us to make his under the radar selections, which are 21-5 against the spread. But as of a couple of weeks ago, and again, these numbers have gone up. If you took all my picks against the spread, you'd be up about $2,000 at $100 per. If you took all my money line selections, your payout would be about, again, $3,400 as of a couple of weeks ago. And Steve's under the radar selections, 21-5 against the spread, going back to 2022. So that's week 1 of 2022. You'd be up more than $1,800. He's picked 2 since then. So crank that up about another $180. So you're sitting on right about $2,000. All right. Hey, we're live on Twitter as well, and nobody's watching us. All right. See what I say about, I posted this video that we did today with our guy, Lars Hansen from Huskies Locked On Podcast, and 23 likes. That's not bad. 23 likes, 1,700 impressions. And we celebrated with our friend Chris Frazier from Spear Addicts on Florida State Seminoles Talk there at Spear Addicts with 4,000 subs. And I can't remember. I posted a video, Alabama fans, Michigan fans, looking at the series history between the two, 5 games. I have fun doing those. Nobody likes to watch them, but I have fun doing those. 5-game series between Bama and Michigan. I watched all those games, so I remember them well. And there you see Tom Brady and Lloyd Carr celebrating after the 2000 Orange Bowl win. Mac Jones and Najee Harris at the most recent meeting at the Citrus Bowl. And then I'm promoting my personal Twitter there. 32 likes. Okay, this is what I said. No, this wasn't what caught people. Michigan fans, you would be proud of me here. Jason Staples, I don't know who that is. I don't know if that's a media person or just a fan, who that is. But Jason Staples posted, Louisville has a better offense than Michigan. Don't tell me this defensive line, meaning Florida State, would not have a chance in the playoff. Well, there's one problem with that. I don't think the playoff is a game between defensive lines. I don't think the 4 teams' defensive lines are the only ones showing up to the playoff. So that's an issue. That could be a problem. But I get his point. But he says that Louisville has a better offense than Michigan. No, incorrect. And I pointed out in another post responding to Jason Staples that Michigan has a better quarterback, better running backs, better offensive line, and the receivers are close. And Louisville actually has good tight ends, but Michigan better tight ends. So again, we're into last night. So that would have been my last post where posted some type of opinion there. Who's that guy? How'd that get on there? This I believe to be a home run hire for New Mexico football. We've not talked about this because nobody's going to listen to us talk about the Lobos, but to hire Bronco Mendenhall is an excellent coach. He is a top 15 to 20 coach in college football, and he's coaching in the group of five, probably because he just wants a low pressure. I want to coach football, run a program, make a difference in the community. He's that kind of guy. But that's a great hire. That is a great hire. All right. Oh, man. Do we have our buddy Tim checking in tonight? Tim, what's going on? Hello, Tim. Maybe not. Maybe he's just doing some work behind the scenes, possibly. All right. So back to the Heisman Trophy talk. And Adam, again, thank you for your contribution. We looked at the defense. So I just wanted to give props to the defense. Now, on the offensive side of the ball, let's go to receiving. Now, statistically, forget it to try to separate these guys. It's an offensive game. There are 10 or 12 prolific passing attacks out there and quarterbacks putting up huge numbers. Therefore, their receivers are putting up huge numbers. Malik Neighbors and the other LSU wide receiver, Brian Thomas, and this is listed by yardage. Rome Odunze of Washington caught 81 balls. Look at Malik Washington of Virginia, had 110 catches. Troy Franklin had an outstanding year. Nobody paid much attention to South Carolina, but Xavier Legette's a really good receiver. And then, of course, you've got Luther Burden of Missouri in their comeback year, former five-star, and Marvin Harrison Jr., whose statistics will really not, they're impressive, of course, but they will not wow anyone to be like over the top. Marvin Harrison Jr. caught 67 passes. That's 19 less than Malik Neighbors, or 14 less than Rome Odunze, or 43 less than Malik Washington, 14 less than Troy Franklin, on down the line. However, big catches. And this is where the Heisman voters get it right. The Heisman voters, I thought you guys were seeing all those stats. The Heisman voters, for as much as they have to take grief from me, they got it right in regards to understanding the impact of Marvin Harrison Jr. They understand the impact. Excuse me, everyone. I'm getting back to someone. So I would like to let everyone know that Tim Prangley and Matt Zemek are ready to go on live on our USC channel to take calls. So keep that in mind. Again, Tim Prangley, Matt Zemek on the USC channel. So we would love for all of you to make your way on over to the USC channel. That's always a good time because you talk about a wealth of knowledge on USC football in one room, and especially with Matt, bring up any college football conference or team, and he is ready to roll. And so Matt and Tim do a phenomenal job. We all get together, the three of us, every Monday night for our USC show at 11 Eastern, 8 Pacific. But Tim and Matt typically get together every Friday night, as they will tonight on the USC channel, and they will be taking your calls. So check that out. All right, I did want to get to the offense. And again, this is difficult for me to sort out, but I will say this based on the stats and based on my knowledge of these players and who truly is a great player. Marvin Harrison Jr. is the best wide receiver in college football. But after that, Troy Franklin, Roma Dunze, and Malik Neighbors all had exceptional seasons, and they would be right there as well. Luther Burden, I didn't get to see him much this year. I just know by reputation he's phenomenal. Isaiah Williams of Illinois, he's not in that class, but he had a great year. Brian Thomas at LSU. Let me see who else is on this list. In terms of a slot receiver, Xavier Restrepo of Miami is really good. Xavier Worthy, of course, a top talent. Ricky Pearsall. So let's also keep in mind he's not going to have super stats because he missed the first few games of the season, and I don't even see him on here. And that's Tez Walker of North Carolina. Once he burst onto the scene after they got the NCAA situation cleared up and he was cleared to play after his transfer from Kent, he took off. Watch him play. Tez Walker, North Carolina. I don't know what his eligibility situation is in terms of going pro, but now let's get to the quarterback. No, let's go to the running backs because I wanted to highlight a few guys here. Ollie Gordon, if you're not familiar, what he did with the resurgence of Oklahoma State football this year after the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season, he only had 36 carries. No, let me check that. I don't remember the number. It was a low number of carries through the first 3 games of the season. Little used to begin as Oklahoma State was figuring out. Mike Gundy was very open about this. We're going to take a few weeks to figure out our starting running back and take a few weeks to figure out our starting quarterback. And they suffered for it. They got a beat down from South Alabama by 26 points. But Ollie Gordon went on a roll. 1,600 yards, 20 touchdowns. He should win the Doak Walker Award as the top running back in college football. Cody Schrader, if you don't know about his story, he was a 2-star, maybe a 3-star, but he was not offered anywhere else in the Power 5 besides Missouri, and may not have even had an FBS offer as a record-setting running back out of, what state? Was it Kansas or Missouri? No, I think it was Missouri. I think he grew up in Missouri. Let me see. I'm almost positive. And always wanted to play for the Tigers. Yes, he's from St. Louis, Missouri. There you go. From Lutheran South. And his player board on 247 Sports, nothing. No ranking, not available. He was not even ranked. And the rankings go to 1,500 players, maybe even more than that. I should check on that. They might go close to 2,000 players. He was not on the board, period. And Cody Schrader got off to a good start, but man, down the stretch, down the stretch, Cody Schrader as a walk-on at Missouri, a walk-on running back in the SEC. Where's his game log? Was crazy down the stretch. Not enough to win the Heisman. But these games are listed in reverse order. So starting, let's pick it up with the LSU game. A $114 against LSU with 3 touchdowns. Then 71 against Kentucky with a touchdown. 159 against South Carolina, 2 TDs. 112 yards against the Georgia defense with a touchdown. 205 against Tennessee on 35 carries, touchdown. Touchdown against Florida, 148, 6.4 per carry. And then against Arkansas to conclude the season, 217 yards and a touchdown. He ran for just under 1,500 yards and 13 touchdowns, caught 22 passes. So not a Heisman by any stretch for Cody Schrader, but just notable for sure. You know who might have had not a Heisman season, but may have warranted a trip to New York if he would have been healthy, is actually Travion Henderson. We'll not dig his stats out, but he had huge games against Notre Dame, Wisconsin, and others. All right, let's get to the quarterbacks. And for those of you who have been watching me for quite some time, you know that I'm not crazy about the Heisman Trophy. Now, to be more specific about that, I have been crazy about the Heisman Trophy my entire life. Now, if you would have caught me at 10 years old or 20 or 30 or 40, 40, maybe not. Always watched it, always cared. You know, I ran around the house when Eddie George won the Heisman in 1995. It has meant something to me to watch the Heisman, vote on the Heisman. I was the guy that would go through all the Heisman ballots, all the way down to the end, to the person that had one point. They had one vote, one third place vote, and go comb through all of them. But as I become a bit jaded and tainted through the years, whatever. I still believe it's the most prestigious award in all of sports. People remember who wins the Heisman. If I asked any of you who are huge NFL fans who has won the last 10 MVPs, you would probably know just because it's kind of obvious. I would guess and probably get most of them because I would say Aaron Rodgers, Pat Mahomes, and then right before that, Peyton Manning. That probably covers most of them. Lamar Jackson, I think, won one. So just by default, you kind of know, but you really don't know. You really, I don't know, for as publicized as the NFL is and as much as the NFL dominates the sports landscape in this country, the NFL MVP, the Heisman Trophy is the most prestigious team award in sports still. So it does matter. I had a strong opinion. The year that Johnny Manziel won was the first year basically that I had this channel, and I produced a bunch of Johnny Manziel numbers because nobody knew who Johnny Manziel was. I produced Johnny Manziel numbers when he first started cranking out numbers against like Sam Houston State and Lamar before he hit the SEC. And people didn't know who Johnny Manziel was. And I kind of caught that a little early. I remember cranking out these videos going, look at this guy. So those were the first Heisman videos I posted. And then I really was on a roll the year that Derrick Henry won. And he earned it. He deserved it. But I made a case for Christian McCaffrey. I believe that he should have won the Heisman Trophy. So 2015 kind of put me off a little bit. Although, again, Derrick Henry, fine selection, but Christian McCaffrey, best selection. Now in 2016, that was the year that annoyed me because Lamar Jackson, exceptional athlete. Not that it matters in the Heisman argument, but obviously he moved on to the NFL and proved to be something that many people did not expect, an NFL quarterback, a starting quarterback in the NFL. So he proved many wrong, not me. I didn't doubt him. I didn't really have an evaluation that I remember, but I didn't doubt him. But sticking to his junior season at Louisville in 2016, it was a great statistical season. It was phenomenal. He accounted for 50 touchdowns and a zillion yards, and he ran all over Syracuse and Georgia Tech. Whoop-de-doo. Okay. He almost notched a huge win against Clemson that would have knocked Clemson out of the playoff, if you remember that game. Why his wide receiver stepped out of bounds before he got to the first down, I don't know. But they had the ball in the red zone, almost upset Clemson in Death Valley. Now, if he would have won that game, okay, we've got a different story. But he was just a stats machine. They went 9-3. And of course, the bowl game is after the Heisman voting and announcement. But man, he was bottled up by a tremendous LSU defense in the Citrus Bowl. I was a Deshaun Watson guy. I don't think there's any question that Deshaun Watson was the best player in America in 2016. He should have won the Heisman Trophy. So, all right. We've got a couple super chats we will hit here. We appreciate Adam coming back with this one. Thank you for the 10 spot, Adam. We appreciate it. Mark, do you think it would have been feasible for the committee to switch to a 16 playoff given how close the teams were in quality? Would it have been logistically possible? Yes. And you know what proves our point there? The COVID year. Teams were deciding on Friday that they were going to, Friday, that's a bit of a stretch, deciding on Tuesday or Wednesday that they were going to play on Saturday. Remember that BYU Coastal Carolina game that they just threw together? Now, of course, the playoffs are an event. It's not just, okay, let's make sure the stadium's clear on that Saturday. BYU, get a plane flight, come out here, we'll play. I get that. Oh, yes, they could have made that work. But there's all sorts of legalities and contracts and all of that. And I don't like the 16 playoff anyway, because you have to award buys. And I don't believe that that's fair, nor do I believe that we have an equitable system to fairly determine buys. But based on what we've seen this year, they would certainly go to Michigan and Washington as those two undefeated conference championship teams that are not Florida State. Who would your 6 be? My 6 would be, Florida State's got to be in. And then I think we've got an argument between Georgia and Ohio State. We've got a huge argument between those two. Georgia would get the nod because, well, this makes no sense, but because they're the 2-time defending champions, that should have nothing to do with it. But they also made the SEC championship game. Ohio State's got a better resume than Georgia, but the majority of people in that room probably believe that Georgia's better. So, yeah, I think it is logistically feasible that it would happen. Tim, do you want in? Raise your hand. Yes, there he is. Tim, what's going on?
Is my mic working okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Doing good. Just self-promotion. But also I had to ask you, okay, so you're not a Heisman fan.
Oh, you're asking me?
Yeah, well, so I'm doing a mental list of Mark Rogers. You don't like the AP poll. You don't care where game day is going to be.
I just don't understand why anyone would care where game day is.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that one. As a
I
matter of
just
fact,
never understood that.
after the last game day, I don't care where it is or when it's on anymore because that was.
And I state this not in a boasting fashion. It's just kind of ironic. I state this. First of all, I watched game day from the time I was whatever when it started and loved it, and think that for years and years and years and years, and maybe even to this day, exceptional show, the best of its kind that we've ever seen. So it's not a knock against game day. But I just don't understand why people care where it is. And I don't watch it anymore just because I'm done watching pregame and have been for a long time. But it's also ironic that my last job at ESPN, the last position I had at ESPN, the guy that was in charge of audio for game day reported to me.
Well, the last game day I probably will ever watch was the one leading up to the selection game where they literally brought Sankey on to petition, or not petition, to explain how one thing's not like the other, meaning it's the SEC. It's like ordained that we're in the playoffs. What kind of blasphemy would it be if you left this amazing conference out of a playoff? Now, I'm not going to argue if Alabama deserves to be there or not. It's just the language that was used. It was almost like, well, it's a playoff. The SEC has to be in it. That really, and it was clear. It's clearly now ESPN's a marketing tool for, if it wasn't already. Now it's not even hidden anymore. It's just basically a big infomercial for the SEC.
Yeah. Now, if they wanted to bring out all the commissioners, that would be phenomenal. Bring them all on.
Right. Yeah. So
now, when it comes to the Heisman Trophy, I guess I just much of the things that I have cast aside in my life in the sports world is because of time. Some of it's because of time. If you made me sit down and watch a baseball season like I did 10 years ago, that would not be torture to me. But I've just kind of cast aside Major League Baseball. It just kind of fell off. So I just don't have time for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, mine was with my kids. I was hockey, football, and baseball just year round, and then college basketball year round. But then when my kids popped up about 25 or so years ago, that all went out the window. I had to start making choices on Saturdays.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
But yeah, that's right. But I mean, I'm just thinking because like a lot of things are the fabric of the sport, Mark. It's like you're just kind of knocking each of them. You know what I mean? Like traditionally, when you think about the college football, you think about the polls, which are now kind of antiquated now. Game day, which is pretty much, I think, pretty soon when it becomes regionally just the Southeastern Conference, will be antiquated again. And then the bowls, you're not really a big fan of the bowls either.
No. I love the bowls.
Oh, okay. Well, when you
love the bowls.
When you do your okay, so you enjoy them. You don't put a lot of credence into them. Because when you do your all-time rankings,
yes,
you don't seem to put a lot of weight in the bowls, and that's one of the metrics you and I always argue on. Because I think especially if we're doing all-time rankings, the bowl, maybe like not the last 15 years of bowl games, right?
Yeah.
But before we started getting like the Papa John's Bowl and the LA Bowl and all the ridiculous bowls, usually had like the top teams in each conference playing each other.
But those bowl games wouldn't affect the type of programs we're talking about. So that wouldn't even matter.
Okay.
But no. I am not going to say that my all-time rankings, and we'll do this in the off season, folks. We're almost to the off season. Not that we want to be in the off season, but we'll do an all-time rankings list again. And we go through what I've got in that all-time rankings, Tim, is all-time winning percentage, national championships, conference championships, bowl record, and major bowl record, because you could look at Iowa's bowl record against Ohio State's in the Big Ten, and they might be comparable. I don't know. But just like if you compared USC's with Arizona State's, they're just not playing the same caliber teams. So there has to be a distinguishment there. Then I've also done Heisman trophies, major award winners, gone through all the positions, all those. Oh, NFL draft selections, first round selections, and maybe I'm missing a few things, but that's pretty much everything we've measured.
I mean, we have our biases and our reasons for it. Like I put a lot of I put a lot of weight to the bowl record because Alabama and USC are really the two schools that have really great bowl records. I mean, they've had some Freedom Bowls in there, but mainly, they've been big bowls that they've been to, and crushed it. And then there's other programs like Michigan, Ohio State. You guys win a hell of a lot of games, but your bowl records just pretty rough. You know what I mean?
Ohio State's bowl record isn't that bad.
No.
Michigan's isn't great. They're about 10 games under 500. Ohio State's about 500.
Well, that's what I mean. What is Alabama? Alabama's like 60%.
Ohio State's 27 and 28. Michigan, I believe, is 21 and 29.
See, that's bad.
Why is it not coming up? I can't find it, but I'm almost positive that's the number. USC, do you know USC's off the top of your head?
No,
I guess it's in the realm of 30 and 20, something like that.
I think, I don't know if that. Well, I think like 60 something percent.
35 and 21.
Wow, it's better than I thought. And again, most of those wins are like Rose Bowls.
I don't know how great the math is on Wikipedia because it says USC has appeared in 55 bowl games with a record of 35 and 21. Well, that's 56.
They probably vacated.
So
they probably took the loss, one win and one loss, one Rose Bowl win, one Rose Bowl loss.
Yeah, I don't know. And Alabama.
Before the Helton years, USC was right there with Alabama. But Alabama's like head and shoulders above everybody.
Are they really?
Yeah. But I don't count Boise State. They when they do those rankings, they have Boise State.
Alabama's 44 and 26. Well, you're talking in total wins. They are.
Yeah, total wins, total appearances.
Well, you have to understand something. In the Big Ten, nobody went to a bowl game until 1975 if they didn't win the Big Ten. You'd like Michigan going 10-1 4 years in a row and not going to a bowl game.
Well, they also had the no repeat rule, but that was in both. That was in the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
Like USC, there were times where they wouldn't go because they couldn't go back. There was a no repeat rule. So yeah, there were those handicaps as well. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I'm trying to lobby you to rethink just like, how important, because those bowls throughout the years were the big, and a lot of those Rose Bowls were big games that decided national championships and, all kinds of stuff.
They're a part of my, I know what else I have in those rankings is the AP, even though I'm not a big fan of the AP poll because I think it's fraudulent much of the time. It's still, obviously, if you're ranked number 5 in the final AP poll, you're a really good team. It's not like you should have been 23rd. They're not missing it by that much. So it's largely credible. I put the AP poll points. That's another metric in there, which we know the teams that are in the top 5 there. The teams that are always in the AP poll. And I think I separate out the top 10 finishes, the top 5 finishes, all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. The polling. Yeah. But polling is still the polling, and on the field where it matters the most in the biggest games, which until the playoffs were the major bowls, the New Year's Day bowls.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't know. I know you do enough adding up and working out all the numbers for everything else you're doing, But if you just maybe made it, what are the records in like, the big bowl games?
Oh, I
Right.
include that too.
How much weight though do you put to that? Like, because I think your number one metric is just wins and losses, right? And my argument about that is no one really plays, like for instance, so Ohio State plays Michigan every single year throughout the years. USC's played Notre Dame every single season throughout the years. And there's teams like that. And then there's teams that don't, and then they compile all these wins. And they play I don't know. Just you don't play the same teams.
And like you've stated, USC has never played an FCS team.
Right. And then look at USC in the 70s, especially and the 80s, really. As you know, in any decade, when Pete Carroll's there, their non-conference games have always, I've never been ashamed, sorry, I shouldn't say that. Rarely have I been ashamed until like almost recent times of USC's non-conference schedule. They usually play consistently Power 5 and then national powers throughout the decades. Whereas some schools just really didn't. It wouldn't be odd to see USC playing. Well, look at next year. USC's playing LSU, and now the Big Ten's different, but this is the non-conference. LSU and Notre Dame. And so when you have that Notre Dame, and then throughout the Pete Carroll years,
sure,
you'd have USC playing, like a Virginia Tech in Notre Dame, or you'd have them playing Ohio State, Notre Dame. You'd have them playing Nebraska, Notre Dame. It's just those are every year rolling out year after year after year. So you don't play the same schedules as well. So looking at your overall record, I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure if that's the best metric for it.
You're asking me to make like some kind of strength of schedule metric, and unless somebody wants to pay me like $50,000 to do like some kind of advanced, like do months of study and so forth, then that's just not going to happen.
Yeah, no, that'd be a hell of an endeavor. And Hummus, USC's record period in the Rose Bowl, it wasn't just the first before USC's record since 1945 in the Rose Bowl is pretty damn good still. I mean, if you want to go ahead and do the work on that one, you can. But I guarantee you, at the bare minimum, it's over 500.
What is Hummus saying here?
He's talking about prior to 1945, which is a good argument. He's talking about teams that would have to come out on a train instead of a flight. The early Rose Bowls, it was quite a lot of travel for an East Coast or a Midwest team to come from the Midwest, on a plane flight and then spending the whole week going to Lowry's and going to Disneyland, all that. It's not really the same thing. But he came in at 504. Oh, here it is. Right here.
Well, I was going to comment to this. Adam is saying here, which Adam's a very knowledgeable fan. Mark, you know better than the average person who the best teams are. Well, that's quite the compliment. I'm trying to think of anybody. Sorry to state it in such a blunt way. I can't think of anybody who's going to come on here and know more than me about who the best teams are. But anyway, I just found that kind of amusing.
Well, pretty soon it's good. We have he is our unofficial sponsor for the USC show. It's the Conquest Collins show sponsored by Adam, because
nice.
he's always in there.
Well,
I will say this. He does it in shows.
I will say this to add to what you're saying about USC. Just the statistic of Rose Bowl record is one of the most dominant, ridiculous statistics you're going to see in sports. Just USC's Rose Bowl record versus the other teams in the Pac-12 and the Big Ten. Just to consider Ohio State and Michigan and Washington and other powers in the Pac-12 and how it just dwarfs all of them. Now, some of that can be explained on the Ohio State side, that just in the last 20 years reaching BCS, like they would have gone to Rose Bowls in the past, but they went to BCS championship games several times. So the system has changed, but USC's lead is so astronomical that it would only have added 4 or 5 onto Ohio State's total.
Yeah, I mean, there would definitely be a lot more wins for and Michigan the last couple of years, right? They would be in Rose Bowls,
Yeah,
and they
they
most
would've
likely
won
would have
those.
won those as
Yeah.
well, which would get them getting close to being 500. Definitely, Ohio State would be over 500. Yeah, that's a great argument as well. No, I'm just saying the thing we always go back and forth to it. USC's like this. You know, we're down, we'd love to go far down, but we're up, we love to go way up. But you know, you guys just ride at that level and then pop up once in a while and win a national championship or have a great run and go to the playoffs like every year. But
Yeah, if we're going to take it since the Pete Carroll era, basically this century, then obviously the one time that USC did play and well, the famous Texas game was at the Rose Bowl, so that was taken care of. Now, they would have been in the Rose Bowl the previous season. Instead, they went to the Orange Bowl to win the national championship. So there's a Rose Bowl that USC didn't play in. But most of the time, they were going to those Rose Bowls. Ohio State in 02 won a national championship at the Fiesta Bowl. In the old days, they would have been in the Rose Bowl. In 06, they were playing in the BCS championship game. In 07, they were playing in the BCS champ. They would have been playing in the Rose Bowl. In 2014, they were winning a national championship. They would have been playing in the Rose Bowl. 2020, they were playing in a national championship game. They would have been in a bunch of other times. Yeah.
I just wish we had the playoffs when Pete Carroll was there. That's one huge, huge. I mean, I wonder. I'm going to tell you, SC probably wins about. I really do. I think that they probably win about 4 titles in that decade with Pete Carroll. 3, at least 3. I'll say it, obviously at least 3, probably 4 if Pete could have got mulligans like you get now. I mean, back then you lose one game, you were out. You know, you didn't have a chance.
Yeah.
Well, if you're the Pac-12, you were. That's
in
2008 USC. I mean, till I go to the grave, I will tell you that 2008 USC team. That is literally that defense is one of the best. That's a historic defense without a doubt in my mind. And until then, the big story was the SEC and how tough the defense, because their offenses were crap, but how stout their defense was. And then USC pops up. And by the way, everyone talks about the Pete Carroll used to talk about the Carson Palmers, the Leinerts, the Reggie Bushes, but those defenses were putting just as many guys in the NFL and just as many All-Americans as anything. And it just all came together in that 2008 team. The 2007, 8 and teams, I'm pretty sure all those guys went to the NFL. I think all the starters actually ended up in the NFL. I'd be surprised if there was one that didn't make it off of those teams. And it was just ridiculous. I think they give up less than 10 points a game, and they're rushing with like 65 yards a game. It was stifling. It would have been nice to see them in that instead of Oklahoma. Was it Oklahoma in Florida? Is that what it was?
Yes.
Yeah. Either one of them, USC should have been over them.
So the 02 team would have been borderline to make the playoff. There would have been an argument there.
Right.
The 10-2, then 11-2 team.
Yeah, they lost to Washington State and they lost to Kansas State.
Then 03 through 08, all those teams would have been in the playoff. So they would have went to the playoffs 6 years in a row. Yeah.
Would have, could have. Oh, listen, I got to get ready. We get the show at 6:00.
Yeah, we are ready to shut down here pretty soon.
All right, guys. Well, come join us if you want to keep the football talk going. Matt covers USC, but we're going to be talking all kinds of football. We're going to be talking some basketball. Bronny James, if you guys didn't know, over the summer, so it's LeBron James' son, came to USC, actually has had a cardiac arrest. His heart stopped. And this is the second time in like a couple of years this happened at USC. The good news is on Sunday, he's going to actually, he's been reinstated. He's been practicing, and he's actually supposed to make his play his first game on Sunday. So LeBron James' son, who's playing with Dennis Rodman's son on USC's team. It's kind of an interesting cast of characters on the team. So we'll be talking about that too.
Cool.
All right, guys.
Thanks, Tim.
Later.
So again, head on over to the USC channel for more college football talk there with Tim and with Matt. Biggs Mikes Good talking ball with you, Mark. If Michigan wins the Natty, will you come on here and say that? Thanks for all the great content. No, I will not. There will need to be a large incentive for me to do that. If somebody can come up with a large incentive, then yeah, I can be bought. If there's no morality involved, then I can be bought. My best example of that would be the night a couple of years ago when somebody said they wrote in and they said, Mark, what will it take for you to throw that Michigan helmet into the trash? And I said, well, what do you have? And they said, I'll give you $50 to throw the Michigan helmet in the trash. And I said, absolutely. I'll take your $50. I'll throw the Michigan helmet in the trash. However, I'm going to let it sit there for about 3 seconds. I'm going to pull it out of the trash and I'm going to put it back on the platform back here. So your entertainment value is going to have to equal that $50 for that 3 seconds of entertainment. But I said, if you want me to take the Michigan helmet and throw it in the trash permanently and not have a Michigan helmet back here, you're going to have to pay me. And I started to do the calculations on through the years and what I believe this channel is going to be worth someday. I don't know. Pay me $1 million. I'll throw any of these helmets in the trash permanently. But I'll do it for $50 for just a one-shot deal. All right. So let's finish up our Heisman talk. And I'll just basically say this. Let's get to the quarterbacks. And I would like for the Heisman Trophy winner to have played in championship impacting games. And that is not Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels, once LSU lost to Alabama, was not going to be taking his team to the SEC championship game. So that was out. However, Jaden Daniels has put the best season together. His quarterback rating is 22 points higher than anyone's. Michael Penix had a nice season, of course, but down the stretch, Bo Nix had a superior season to Michael Penix. Now, Michael Penix's team is playing in the college football playoff. So if there were enough ballots that were held until after the Pac-12 championship game and after last weekend, which they should be, then maybe Michael Penix has a chance to pull it off. Even though he didn't have some remarkable game against Oregon, they did score 34 points, and they did pull off an upset in the Pac-12 championship game to get to the playoff and finish an undefeated 13-0 season. But Michael Penix's completion percentage is 11 plus points behind Bo Nix and about 7 points behind Jaden Daniels. Daniels threw 40 touchdowns and 4 picks. Bo Nix threw 40 touchdowns and 3 picks. And Michael Penix threw 9 interceptions against 33 touchdowns. Of course, Michael Penix, no threat on the ground. Bo Nix ran for 200 or 300 yards. And Jaden Daniels ran for a ridiculous 8.4 yards per carry. 8.4 yards per carry. That includes sacks and 1,100 yards and accounted for 50 touchdowns. Daniels had 50 touchdowns. Nix 46. Penix 36. I would reluctantly vote for Jaden Daniels 1, Bo Nix 2, Michael Penix 3. And then on down the line, if there are other ballot spots, I would start to mix in some wide receivers and defensive players. Marvin Harrison Jr., Xavier Watts, Ollie Gordon come to mind in particular. All right, folks, we do appreciate you all being here at the Voice of College Football. And thank you so much for your support. Check out the videos we're posting. We're going to keep them coming. Next, I am going to do an Alabama-Michigan statistical look. We are also going to run down Alabama and Michigan historically. I will do the same on the other side with Texas and Washington. So those are on the way. And again, we're going to do it up big here at the Voice of College Football. Bowl season is only 1 week away. So 1 week from tomorrow, Saturday, we will have, I believe, 7 bowl games on that day. 7 bowl games next Saturday, I believe. Well, I can't find a list of bowl games, but we'll leave it at that. 7 bowl games next Saturday, so we'll have fun with that. We'll be here. And also keep in mind the Heisman Trophy presentation is Saturday night, as well as the Army-Navy game. So let's honor our men and women in uniform. All right, folks, appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. Please subscribe to the SEC and Big 12 channels. If you enjoy what we do here, even if you can't stand the Big 12 or the SEC, please subscribe and help us build the network. Right here at the Voice of College Football, head on over to the USC channel at 9 Eastern here in 45 minutes. They will take your calls on USC and college football. We will see you soon.